So when you're looking at the impetus for the writer's strike and the actor's strike, it really all stems from the streaming economy and the way that the advent of streaming services really advanced and disrupted the entire Hollywood economy. And so you had writers and actors saying, hey, you know, the residual structure isn't the same. You know, the way business is done isn't the same. You know, there's not the usual pilot cycle, the usual development cycle. Pretty much everything about the way TV in particular, TV and film, but TV in particular was made, had been disrupted.
Hell yeah.
Writers were looking for, you know, greater minimum rates. You know, they were looking for residuals from big streaming hits. They wanted to really, you know, have more control over room sizes because the writers' rooms themselves, they felt were shrinking, especially with the advent of these things called mini rooms, where you only had, you know, 2 or 3 writers, you know, working on a show. And also just limited series, because you had so many smaller streaming orders. You had 10-episode orders instead of the usual 22 to 24 broadcast, you know, sitcom series. So, you know, the way everything worked was just really different. And the same thing with the actors, too. You had, you know, actors who were looking for greater minimum rate increases, who were looking for improved residual structures. Essentially, what so many people told me on the picket lines was that the way of life that Hollywood had provided for them before within the old business model had changed, and it just wasn't sustainable for the working writer or working actor.
SAG-AFTRA's National Board unanimously voted
SAG's board voted
strike
to strike!
How they plead poverty, that they're losing money left and right when giving hundreds of millions of dollars to their CEOs. It is disgusting. Shame on them.
The writer's strike ultimately lasted 148 days. I think that was a lot longer than some folks thought was going to happen. Same with the actor's strike, which wound up lasting, you know, something like 118 days. You know, the writers and actors were very resolute that they wanted to see changes to the contract because in many ways their contracts hadn't really caught up with the technology, with the new streaming economy and all the parts of the business that had trickled down to, and then that had changed. I mean, so what the writers achieved with their new contract, they all seemed very pleased with. You know, the WGA called it, I think, exceptional. You know, some of those major wins were, you know, increases to minimum rates, you know, staffing minimums on writers' rooms, which were really important to a lot of the TV writers that I'd spoken to, as well as, you know, residuals, this new structure for streaming hits. So anytime there's a big hit on Netflix or Disney Plus, writers are now going to be able to participate in a higher upside on that, as well as more protections over AI. And the thing about AI is such a fast-moving technology that I think part of the difficulty over figuring out where to land between the studios and the guilds is that there's really no telling exactly how it's going to be deployed in the coming years. But we know this technology is already here. We know it's viable, especially on the actors' front, when you look at the way their digital likenesses can be used and have already been used to some degree. Now that the entire contract has been released, you know, there's still a lot of concern over AI. And it's really, again, because it's such a fast-moving technology and there's no telling how it's going to be used by the studios. I've talked to background actors who say they've gotten scanned and are now concerned about whether that will be used by the studios in some AI form or function, whether that'll be used without them knowing. But now there are some very basic guardrails in place, although some performers are worried that that's not going to be enough, and that won't be enough to protect them from whatever the studios wind up intending to use it for. I mean, streaming is such a notoriously low-margin business, but it's the way of the future. People just aren't watching linear TV at the rates they used to. So many people watch Netflix instead. They watch on-demand TV. So this is just the way that the consumer economy is moving toward. And it's the same thing with AI. There was an acknowledgement, on the part of the guilds, essentially, that this isn't a technology that anybody can make go away. This is something that people are going to have to learn to coexist with. It's just how the business is going to have to learn to coexist with it that's going to be a point of contention in the future.